Okay, so let's take a look at our Mishnah Brura. Mishnah Brura Chelik Vav. And we are in Hilchis Hanukkah. It's towards the end of Chelik Vav, Simin Tov Reish Ayin Aleph, which would be the equivalent of 671. Tov Reish Ayin Aleph, Hilchis Hanukkah.
We're skipping the first.
For me personally, this is the most enjoyable way to learn. If you learn Gemara without then going to the Halakha, you're halfway on the road. You haven't taken the full trip. If you open a Mishnah Brura and you just learn the halachas, they sound like do, don't, do, don't, do, don't, do, don't, do, don't. You have to memorize all these do, don'ts. So that's also halfway down the road, but not the full way down the road. But when you learn the Gemara and you deal with the cases, and then you move on to the Shulchan Aruch, suddenly the whole thing comes together, because when you see the halach, you say, I know where that came from. It came from the Gemara that I just learned. So we're going to look at a particular piece of Hilchis Hanukkah that deals with where do you put the Ner Hanukkah, what position do you put it in. So we learned that the best place to put the Ner Hanukkah is so that it is outside. And the reason we want it outside is Parsume Nisa. We want, the whole point of lighting Hanukkah candles is to publicize the miracle of Hanukkah to other Jews and to the whole world. We want to tell the whole world the story of Ner Hanukkah. So there's this idea of Parsume Nisa. So we learned in the Gemara and Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis, the best place to put it is outside your house. Remember, we didn't know what outside the house meant. There was a machlokes Rashi Tosis, which we're going to see in the Shulchan Aruch. Once you put it outside, again, if you don't have an outside because you live in a 5th floor apartment, so you put it at the window that faces the Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara then said, if it's dangerous to light your Hanukkah candles because of the Goyim, so then what you do is you take your Hanukkah menorah and you put it on a table in your house. And for, I don't know, almost 2,000 years or 1,500 years, Jews have put their Hanukkah menorahs inside their house or at a window. But Baruch Hashem in Eretz Yisrael, we've been able to come back to the Icha Mitzvah and light it outside our homes. Okay. We learned that the menorah should be lower than 10 tefachim from the ground, but is not allowed to be higher than 20 amos. Tefachim versus amos. We're going to assume that, let's say, a tefach is about 3.5, 3.6 inches. So 10 tefachim is 36 inches, which is about a yard, 3 feet off the ground. 20 amos is about 40 feet or 45 feet. So the menorah should be lower than 3 feet, 36 inches, and can't be higher than 40 to 45 feet. Now let's see this in Shulchan Aruch. Tov Reish Ayin Aleph Halacha Hey. Ner Hanukkah Manichai al Pesach Hasomach Lushus Harabim Mibachutz. Im Abayis Pasuach Lushus Harabim Manichai al Peschai. Let's take this slow. Ner Hanukkah Manichai al Pesach Hasomach Lushus Harabim Mibachutz. The Ner Hanukkah, the Chanuka, you put it at the door to your house. Which door to the house? That's close to the public domain. In other words, you don't put it at your bedroom door inside your house. You put it at the door that's closest, that opens up to the public domain. Im abayis pasuach l'shus harabim. If you have a house, excuse me, where the front door of your house opens right, you open the front door of the house and you step into the public sidewalk. So if you have such a house, you put it at that door that opens to the public sidewalk. Manichai al pisrei. Ve'im yesh chotzer lefnei habayis. What happens if you open your front door and what you have is not the public sidewalk? You have a courtyard that's shared with other people. We learned about that picture. 3 or 4 houses encircled by a fence, and inside that area, there's a common courtyard. Then the courtyard opened to the public sidewalk. If you live in such a house, let's draw that picture again. Make it a little smaller this time. Okay. 3 houses surrounded by a wall that opens into the public street. 4 houses surrounded by a wall that open into the public street. So here, these 3 houses have a common area right here. These 4 houses have a common area right here. And then both common areas open into the public street. So this is the case of a chotzer. The first case of the Beis Yosef was your house, the front door of your house opens right into the street. So it would look like this. Okay, this is your house. This is the door. And as soon as you open the door, you're in the street. This is a simple case. Where do you light your menorah? Right here at the door that opens into the public street. Simple. What happens if this is what it looks like? You live in this house, this house, this house, this house, this house. Where do you light the menorah? At the door to your house here, or at the entranceway to the public street over here? There are 2 possibilities where to light this menorah. If you're dealing with a chotzer, you can put the menorah at the opening to your door, which opens to the common area, or you can put your menorah at the opening of the gate, which opens to the public street. Where do you put it? So that's what the Beis Yosef is dealing with now. If there is a courtyard in front of your house, you put it at the door of the chotzer. In other words, you're going to put it at the place that opens to the public street, right here. The opening of the chotzer, not the opening of your house. That's what the Beis Yosef says. Now, who said that? When we learned the Gemara, Tosfos said that. Where did Rashi say to light your menorah? Rashi said, light your menorah at the opening of your house into the courtyard. Tosfos is the one that said, put it at the opening to the public place. So the Beis Yosef says, if there is a courtyard in front of the house, manicha al pesach hachotzer, put it at the opening from the courtyard to the public domain, not at the opening to your house into the courtyard. Now you see next to the word, right between the word al and Pesach, there's a star. Everybody see that star in the Beis Yosef?
Okay.
Between the word al and Pesach, there's a star. That star goes down to the left side of your page, Bir Halacha. And in the middle of the Bir Halacha, there's the word Pesach HaChotzer, star Pesach HaChotzer. Everybody with me?
No.
Bottom left-hand side of the page, star Pesach HaChotzer. Bir Halacha is written again by the Chafetz Chaim, and the Chafetz Chaim writes, Ratzaloma. What does the Beis Yosef mean? Shelo Kedas Rashi. This is not like Rashi. Rashi says, where do you put the menorah if there's a courtyard? At the opening of your door to the courtyard. And what does Tosfos say? At the opening of the courtyard to the public domain. What did the Beis Yosef say? At the opening of the courtyard to the public domain. So that means the Beis Yosef is paskening like Tosfos, not like Rashi. So the Mishnah, the Bir Halacha, the Chofetz Chaim writes, "V'rotza loyma shaloi kedas Rashi." The Beis Yosef is not holding like Rashi. The Sover, what does Rashi hold? The manichai al pesach habayis hapasuach lachotzer. Rashi holds you put it at the opening of the door into the courtyard. But that's not what the Beis Yosef said. The Beis Yosef didn't say the opening of the courtyard into the opening of the house into the courtyard. The Beis Yosef said the opening of the courtyard to the public domain. And therefore, you see the Beis Yosef is not paskening like Rashi. So again, if you're looking at this picture, you have houses with a gate around it. Inside the gate, there's common area for the three houses. You have another 4 houses with a gate around it, common area for all the 4 houses. Each common area has an opening that comes into the public street. According to the Beis Yosef, who paskins like Tosfos, if you live in such a courtyard, you light the menorah at the opening of the courtyard to the public street. According to Rashi, light the menorah at the opening of your door into the courtyard. That's Rashi. Tosfos says the opening of the courtyard to the public domain, and that's what the Beis Yosef said. Let's go back to the Beis Yosef. V'im hoyedor ba'aliyah. If someone was living in on a higher floor, she'ein lo pesach pasuach l'shus harabim. He has no door that opens into the Rishus Harabim. Manicho b'chalon hasamach l'shus harabim. You put it at a window that faces the public domain. Again, what's the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah? We're going to drill those words home. Parsu mei nisa. The point of lighting Hanukkah candles is to publicize the miracle. Therefore, they must be lit in a place that the miracle can be seen. You're publicizing the miracle. So it's either outside or it's in a window. Uvishas hasakana. And when it's dangerous to put your menorah outside or in your window because of the goyim, we saw this in the Gemara, she'ena rasha l'kaima mitzvah, where he's not allowed to perform the mitzvah, manichai al shulchanei v'dayai. Then you put the Hanukkah menorah on your table, in your kitchen, and no one has to see it except your family members. We learned this in the Gemara. If you're lighting a Chanuka, this has nothing to do right now with the Shamash. This is basically a rule of Neonosa. There's no electricity in those days. You lit your Ner Hanukkah at the front door, or you lit your Ner Hanukkah at a window. The Ner Hanukkah is giving off light. You're not allowed to benefit from that light, as we learned for several days. We gave 3 reasons yesterday. But it's impossible. There's no electricity. There is light from the candle shining the front door of your house, which allows you to go in or out. Or it's shining at a window, which is lighting up a room. So what do? You add another candle. Again, this is not the shamash. Bisman Hazeh, we don't do this. There's something called a Neonosa. On the 4th night of Hanukkah, you light your 4 candles, you have a shamash, but then you put another candle somewhere near the Chanukiah. So if you walk by that area and you're using the light, it should be considered you're using the light from this extra candle, not the light from the Chanukiah. V'myesh medura, and if there's a medura, a large flame in the area of the Ner Hanukkah, you have a fireplace in your house in those days, and you lit your Hanukkah candles near it, you don't have to add this extra candle because you're going to get plenty of light from the fireplace. And if it's a very important person who lives in that house, a very important person doesn't read and do things against the fireplace, people, chashuva people have candles, private candles. Okay. Then you have to have this extra candle. Okay. So that is the halacha, and we get this from the Gemara. So if you're going to light your candles outside and you live in a courtyard, if you live in a house that when you open the front door, you're at the public domain, you light it right there. If you're in a house that opens into a courtyard, the Beis Yosef paskins like Tosfos, you light the menorah at the opening from the courtyard into the public domain. Okay. Next halacha, Vav. Manicho lamala migimel tfachim. Remember, we learned this in the Gemara. This was the Sugya about the camel that has flax or linen on his back, and he's walking through Machane Yehuda, and there's a store that sells burgers in Machane Yehuda, and the burger store makes burgers on an open flame. And this person takes his camel down Machane Yehuda, and leaning off both sides of the camel's back is linen or flax. And the linen or flax goes into the burger place, lights up from the open fire, and then continues walking and sets fire to someone's house. Remember, that was the Sugya. So from that Sugya, the Gemara learned out that the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah should be lower than 10 tfachim. So if you're lighting at the door, the Ner Hanukkah should be on a table in such a way that the candles are lower than a yard, let's say 36 inches from the floor. But it shouldn't be right on the floor. Manicha l'mala migimel tfachim. It should be higher than 3 tfachim. And the reason for that is, as we're reading, I'm explaining the Mishnah Berurah. Anything that's lower than 3 tfachim from the ground, which means about, let's say, 12 inches, anything that's within a foot of the ground, it's considered as if it's on the ground. For those who learn Masechta Shabbos, Masechta Eruvin, there's a concept called lavud, that if something is within 3 tfachim of something, it's as if it's connected to it. So if you put your menorah within 3 tfachim of the ground, it's as if it's sitting on the floor. And a menorah that's sitting on the floor is not pasumei nisa, it doesn't do anything. So the place where you light the menorah is higher than a foot, higher than 3 tfachim. Mitzvah lanicha lamata miyut tfachim. And the mitzvah is it should be lower than 10 tfachim. So again, between 36 and 40 inches. So it should be higher than 12 inches and lower than 40 inches. If you put the Chanuka higher than 10 tfachim, higher than the 36 to 40 inches, you're still yotze. But if you put your Chanuka higher than 20 amos, lo yotze, you're not yotze. We learned this in the Gemara. Higher than 20 amos is about 45 feet. You put your Chanuka on a pedestal, and the Chanuka is 45 feet off the ground. Whether you light it outside or inside, and you have tall ceilings in your apartment, you're not yotze the mitzvah. Why? What's the reason for lighting Hanukkah candles? Parsumei nisa. And when something is 45 feet off the ground, people generally don't walk in the street with their heads up facing the sky. They just walk straight. And if you're walking straight, 45 feet, 20 amos off the ground, people won't notice it. So you're not yotze the mitzvah there at all. Now there, basically, this halacha of 20 amos off the ground is not nogeya. I don't know anybody that's lighting their menorah 45 feet off the ground. But just as a concept, when we talk about the menorah should be within 20 amos, let's say you have a menorah like this. What has to be within 20 amos? This or this? This. What's the point of the 20 amos? that people should see the light. People should see the light, Pasuminisa. So if this is lower than 20 amos, but this is higher than 20 amos, you're still not Yotze the mitzvah, because people are not going to see the flames. The point is to see the flames. Okay. Now the Rama adds a halacha, Haga, and this is Nogeya for us in many different ways. Va'afilu lakcha kach doluk. Let's say someone lights his menorah 45 feet off the ground. He climbs a ladder, makes a bracha, lights the menorah, and then someone comes over to him and says, Ruve, it's too high. He climbs up his ladder and he brings it down to within 20 amos. Lo yotza, you're not yotze the mitzvah. The hadlocka ose mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? We learned about this very early on. Is the mitzvah to light or to have the candles being lit? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu mitzvosav v'tzivanu lahadlik. The mitzvah is the hadlocka. So if you light it in a place that's not permissible, and then you bring it to a place that is permissible, you're not yotze the mitzvah, because you didn't light it initially in the correct place. So where do we get this halacha from? We know where we get this halacha from. We learned kafsa ein zakuk lo. If you light the Chanuka with a half hour worth of oil and good wicks, and it blows out within the half an hour, you don't have to relight it. If you want to, it's nice to relight it to make sure it's lit. But you don't have to relight it, because if the Hanukkah blew out, you're not responsible for it. Why? Because Hadlocka ose mitzvah. It's the lighting that did the mitzvah. The moment you lit it, the mitzvah is done. And therefore, if it burns out within the half an hour, you're still yotze the mitzvah of Hadlocka, as long as there was 30 minutes worth of oil and wick in there. So therefore, the Rama says, since Hadlocka ose mitzvah, the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is completed when? When you light. If you lit it in a place where you're not allowed to light, and then you correct it and bring it to a place that you're allowed to light, you're not yotze the mitzvah. So if you light the menorah 20 amos above the ground, and then you bring it down, you're not yotze the mitzvah. Let's say someone lights his menorah knowing that it's a place where there's going to be heavy winds that night. So he knows it's going to blow out. And he lights there, and you're not allowed to light in a place that's going to have heavy winds. And then the heavy winds start, and he takes the Chanuka to a protected place. He's not yotze the mitzvah, because when he initially lit it, he lit it in a place that you're not allowed to light. And even if he corrects it later and puts it in a proper place, he's not yotze the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is not that the Hanukkah light should remain lit. The mitzvah is to light it. And if you light it in an improper place, you're not yotze the mitzvah. This rule is called Hadlocka ose mitzvah. The Hadlocka is the mitzvah. Again, we need to emphasize that which we learned early in the Sugya. Hadlocka ose mitzvah is just the first candle. Everything after the first candle is a hidur. How are you yotze the Hadlocka's name is Chanuka on Hanukkah? You can light one candle. If you have 10 children, a wife and 10 children, you can light one candle on the first night, one candle on the second night, one candle on the sixth night, one candle on the eighth night. You yotze the mitzvah. So the mitzvah of Hadlocka is one candle every night. Anything that you add above that first candle is not the mitzvah. It's a hidur mitzvah. It's to beautify the mitzvah. So we do the hidur. We do the hidur like Beis Hillel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If it's the 8th night of Hanukkah and you're doing Beis Hillel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, The first candle you light is the mitzvah. You're yoy to the mitzvah. The next 7 are hidur only, and that's going to be nageya many halachas. So again, hadlocka oisa mitzvah. It's the lighting that does the mitzvah, and so long as you have a half hour worth of oil and wick in there, you are yoy to the mitzvah, even if it blows out during the half hour. Of course, people do relight, but you're not mechuyev to relight, because once you lit, you're yoy to the mitzvah. Second, you have to light it in a proper place. If you start off in an improper place and then bring it to a proper place, you're not yoytze. Again, hadlocka oisa mitzvah, it's the hadlocka that does the mitzvah. Halacha zayin. Mitzvah lahanichai betefach hasamoch lepesach mismol. The mitzvah is to put it within a tefach, within 3.5 or 4 inches of the opening of the door, mismol, on the left side. Kedei shetei mezuzah biyamin, so that the mezuzah is on your right side, v'ner Hanukkah mismol, and the ner Hanukkah is on your left side. V'im ein mezuzah, if a person doesn't have a mezuzah but Pesach, manichai miyamin, then you put the Chanuka on the right side. If you put it in the open space of the door, you put it towards the half of the door that's to the left side. In other words, you have a mezuzah here. You're going to light the Chanuka on the left side. And if you're lighting it in the Pesach, this is the opening, you're going to put it here. Now, there's going to be a lot of different ways. We may not get to this today. We may get to this on Thursday. You can light the Chanuka this way. You can light the Chanuka this way. If I light the Chanuka this way, do I start here or do I start here? If I light the Chanuka this way, do I start here or do I start here? So there's going to be a whole variety of shittas. So the mezuzah is here, the Chanuka is here. Do I stand here, which makes right and left different than if I stand here? For the meantime, the Beis Yosef has told us, I have a mezuzah, Baruch Hashem, the opening of the door, you get the Chanuka within, you should have it within a tefach of the left side. Now this is more than 4 inches from the left side, but it's still okay, because if you split the opening in half, about right here, this side would be considered the right side of the opening, this half, and this half would be considered the left side of the opening. So by having the menorah here, the menorah is in the left-hand part of the opening, which is fine.
Would it be that you only need one or the first light within a tefach?
Now, let's see if we can do this. We can at least start. Let's skip now to Siman Tuf Reish Ayin Vav, 676. Tuf Reish Ayin Vav, Halacha He. This is the Beis Yosef Shita. We'll start today with the Beis Yosef Shita. Yaska lahadlik balel rishon. Let me do it this way. Beis Yosef Tuf Reish Ayin Vav Halacha He. The Chanuka is here. It's on the left side. And the Chanuka is going to be somewhere within 10 tefachim from the ground. So I'm doing it here because that's where the camera is picking it up. But you would want the Chanuka, as we learned, to be higher than 3 tefachim and lower than 10 tefachim. So your Chanuka would be somewhere around maybe right here. Okay. Beis Yosef. Yaschel lahadlik balel rishon b'ner hayose yemini. Here's my Chanuka. The Beis Yosef says on the first night you start lighting with the stick that's most to the right. This is night 1 according to the Beis Yosef. You fill this up with oil, and you light this one. Okay. Now we can already see the problem that the Vilna Gaon is going to have with the Beis Yosef. What's the problem? It seems from the Gemara that you're supposed to light Hanukkah candles on the left side. The Gemara said the mezuzah should be on the right and the Chanuka should be on the left, which also sounds like maybe you should start lighting here, closest to the left side. The mezuzah mitzvah is here, the Chanuka mitzvah is here, and should we start lighting here according to the Vilna Gaon? We'll get to the Vilna Gaon. The Beis Yosef says we start here, and we'll soon see why he holds like that. So the Beis Yosef says, Yaskal Hadlocka b'leil rishon b'ner hayoseh yemini, u'b'leil beis k'sheyosef ner echad samach lo yaskil v'yavarach al hanosef shu yosef smali k'dei lahafnos liyamin, v'chein b'leil gimel k'sheyosef oid echad samach lebeis neves harishonis yaskil b'noisef v'yaskil habracha v'achkach yifna l'tzad yamin v'chein b'chol layla nimtza shetzom tamid mavarach al hanosef shu mor al hanes shebetosves hayom v'nitosef hanes. Beis Yosef. The first night, you light this candle. The second night, Asher Kiddushana Mitzvah V'tzivonu Lahatik Ner Shel Chanuka, and you light this one, the second one. Reason number 1, we want to always light on the Ner Neonosa. The Beis Yosef says tonight is night 2 of Hanukkah. It's the second miracle, and I want to light the second miracle. This second stick represents miracle number 2. And since tonight is miracle number 2, I want to make the bracha and light this one. This is miracle 2. And then I move to this one, which is miracle 1. On the 4th night, the Beis Yosef says, make the bracha and light the 4th stick. It's miracle 4. Then 3, then 2, then 1. That's reason 1 for the Beis Yosef. I want you to make the bracha and light the new miracle. Tonight's 4, new miracle. What else does the Beis Yosef accomplish by doing this? As you're lighting, you're moving from left to right. And as we learned in Masechta Midos, Tamid, there's a rule. How far does the rule go is a question, but there's a rule called Pinosh Atapona Havapona Liyamin. Whenever you need to go in a direction and you need to make a turn, try to make the turn to the right. And we learned about the Kohen going up the ramp on top of the Mizbeach. They would make right turns. You enter the Beis HaMikdash, you make right turns. You always want to move from left to right. So the Beis Yosef accomplishes 2 things. He says, first of all, as an example, night 4, make the bracha and light number 4 first to commemorate the 4th miracle. That's number 1. Commemorate tonight's miracle, so therefore light this one. And by doing this, I'm moving in what direction? Right. I'm moving left to right. And that's also an inyan to the Beis Yosef. Until you get to the 8th night, and according to the Beis Yosef, how are you going to light? Now you're against the left doorpost. On the 8th night, the Beis Yosef says, light this one, make the bracha and light this one, because this is the 8th miracle, and we're going to make the bracha and light number 8, and then I'm going to move from left to right, and I accomplish 2 things. Again, the Beis Yosef says, make the bracha and light on the new miracle, and move from left to right. That's the first sheet of how to light Hanukkah candles. That is the Beis Yosef, and that is basically the shita of that most people follow. There are people that follow the shitas Hagra. According to the Gra, the Vilna Gaon is going to do this. The Vilna Gaon says Beis Yosef starts here and then goes from left to right. The Vilna Gaon says going from left to right is just a nice thing. It has to do with the Mizbeach, it has to do with the Beis HaMikdash. You want to apply it to the Chanuka, that's a nice idea. But there's a much more important idea, the Vilna Gaon says. The Gemara said that the mezuzah is on the right side and the Chanuka is on the left side. Meaning that the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles is the left side. I don't want you starting here like the Beis Yosef says. The Vilna Gaon says, I want you to start here, the left side. That's what the Gemara says. So on the first night, you're going to light this one. On the second night, you're going to light two. But you're going to always make the bracha on this one. According to the Vilna Gaon, what's the Icha Mitzvah? The one that's to the left. So the Vilna Gaon is going to tell you the Beis Yosef is going to start here on night one. Then he's going to, for example, on night 4, light here and move this way. The Vilna Gaon doesn't want you to start here. He wants you to start here. And therefore, you're going to light this one on night 1. Okay. And then you're going to move this way. How does the Vilna Gaon move? So for that, okay, we'll take a look more deeply at the Vilna Gaon. The Mishnah Berurah brings down the Vilna Gaon. If you take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, let's see if we can quickly do the Vilna Gaon. There's one more shita that we won't be able to do today. The first line of the Mishnah Berurah, V'yesh omim de munach b'min ha'pesach, as I tzorach lahaskel tomid b'nei hayamini shusamach ha'pesach v'holach mimin, small. V'meiniach haneros b'smol ha'pesach, tzorach lahadlik gam kein tomid chila haneh hasamach la'pesach, v'holach umadlik mismol liyamin. Okay. The Vilna Gaon, let's take night 4. Beis Yosef says, light number 4 because this is tonight's miracle, and then move from left to right. The Vilna Gaon says, always start on the left. The mitzvah of Hanukkah is the left. On night 4, you're always going to make the bracha here because it's the left. You always want to start at the left. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu mitzvosav v'tzivonu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Light this one, then this one, then this one, then this one. Okay. Those are the 2 basic shitas. There's also a sheet of the Taz. We'll take a look at Yet Shem on Thursday. Was everybody able to see?
Yes.
Okay. So Emir Hashem, we'll take a look at the Taz on Thursday. The Bir Halacha, the Mishnah Chafetz Chaim Bir Halacha explains each of the shitas, and we'll go through the shitas, all 3 again, how you light according to 3 shitas. Most people follow the Beis Yosef, where you start from this side and you keep on moving from left to right. Okay.